The royal harbor had gathered to watch Elowyn Marst put out the last light she was accused of killing. They brought her barefoot across the salt-black stones of Vailmark Pier, past sailors who would not meet her eyes and noblewomen who covered their noses as if widow ash carried disease. Wind tore at her dark cloak. Sea mist clung to the pale strands of hair escaping her braid. At the end of the pier, the ember beacon lens stood inside its bronze frame, taller than a dragon mast, its glass dark as drowned fire. Above the harbor, 100 dragon ships waited in the night. Their wing sails were folded. Their figureheads watched the water with carved mouths open, hungry for flame. By dawn, those ships were meant to guide the Alliance bride into Vailmark. Lady Marivane of the Eastern Fire Courts would arrive beneath red banners, and Dragon King Carrick Vale would greet her beside a beacon cleansed of bad history. That was why Elowyn had been summoned. Not to defend herself. To extinguish the harbor's old shame before a new queen saw it. Lord Beacon Master Thornek Drayle stood at the beacon platform in a coat stitched with copper flame runes. He held the snuffer rod like a priest holding law. Elowyn Marst, he called, voice carrying over the tide. Widow of Huron Marst, lost in the war storm of Blackwater Reach. Former keeper's assistant, recorded fireless, recorded derelict, recorded cause of beacon failure. The harbor listened. Elowyn did not lower her head. Fireless. They always said that word carefully, as if it explained everything. No dragon fire in her blood, no ember call in her hands. No noble flame to wake a lens, command a route, or signal ships through dark water. A woman without fire should have stayed below stairs trimming salt wicks and cleaning ashtrays. She should never have touched a royal beacon. She should never have married a harbor keeper's son. She should never have outlived him. Thornek turned toward the nobles gathered beneath the bride dock canopy. Before His Majesty's alliance, bride enters Vailmark, the court requires the failed widow to perform harbor cleansing. She will place her breath against the extinguishing seal and confirm the old beacon is dead by her own admission. Soft words. Elowyn had learned to hate soft words. Harbor cleansing meant confession. Extinguishing seal meant surrender. Confirm the old beacon is dead meant the court wanted her to bury the only thing that had not lied. She looked past Thornek toward the black water where the ruined West Pier jutted from the sea like broken ribs. Huron's boat had left from there the night of the war storm. He had followed the safe blue line, the one the beacon should have given. By morning, his ship was gone. 3 dragon cutters were splintered on the reef, and Thornek's report said Elowyn had abandoned the lens when the harbor needed fire most. Carrick Vale believed that report. The thought still had teeth. The Dragon King had once paused at the lower lighthouse when she sang the old harbor song while cleaning storm glass. He had asked who taught her the tune. She had answered that her husband said ships remembered voices better than orders. Carrick had almost smiled. After Blackwater, he had not looked at her at all. A horn sounded from the sea wall. Every noble turned. Dragon King Carrick Vell came down the harbor steps in black sea armor, his cloak clasped with a bronze dragon biting a wave. He was tall, dark-haired, and grim enough that even the wind seemed to bend around him. Torchlight caught in his eyes like banked gold. Behind him walked Lady Marivane's envoys, pale and watchful, measuring the harbor that would soon become part of their alliance. Elowyn's chest tightened, not from longing, from the memory of being unheard by a man powerful enough to have listened. Carrick's gaze found her at the beacon platform. For a moment, something passed across his face. Recognition quickly buried. Then his eyes moved to the dark lens, and the king returned. "Proceed," he said. Thornek bowed. "As your majesty commands." 2 guards pushed Elowyn forward. The ember beacon lens rose before her black glass, webbed with faint veins of old bronze light. Once it had turned every dragon ship home through fog storm and war smoke. It did not simply burn. It read breath, root, tide, and flame. The ember beacon lens did not choose flame. It remembered roots. Noble fire could wake it. Harbor song could steady it. Dragon breath could command it. But a root once carried through living breath could remain inside the glass long after every official record called it dead. A fireless widow should have meant nothing to it. Thornek lifted the snuffer rod. "Place your mouth to the extinguishing seal." Elowyn looked at the small crescent of cold metal below the lens. "And if I refuse, then your husband's name remains attached to the dead harbor record." There it was, the hook beneath the soft words. Elowen stepped closer. Carrick watched from the lower stair, unreadable. She wanted him to see her fear. She hated that. Worse, she wanted him to remember her song. She hated that more. Thornek lowered his voice as she passed him. Do not attempt old tricks. The court has brought noble flame enough to expose you. Behind him, young lords raised their hands. Red fire bloomed over their palms and leapt toward the ember beacon lens. The glass turned blacker. One flame died, then another, then all of them. A murmur moved through the harbor. Thornek's fingers tightened on the snuffer rod. Again, the nobles sent stronger flame. The lens swallowed it into darkness. One copper rune on Thornek's coat went dim. Carrick stepped down one stair. Beacon Master. Thornek's face remained calm, but Elowen saw the small fear in his jaw. Old corruption resists, cleansing majesty. Elowen looked at the black lens. No, not corruption. Refusal. The harbor wind shifted. Salt filled her mouth. Somewhere beyond the dark water, dragon ships creaked against anchor as if turning in their sleep, Elowen Carrick said. Her name in his voice almost broke something. Almost. She placed both hands on the bronze frame. You want the dead harbor to answer, Thornek snapped. Put your mouth to the seal. Elowen leaned close. She did not sing. Not for them, not for him. She only exhaled. The ember beacon lens ignited blue. A column of living harbor light shot into the storm-dark sky. Every dragon ship in the bay groaned at once. Their anchor chains pulled tight. Wing sails unfurled without command. One by one, the royal ships turned away from the bride dock and swung toward the ruined west pier where Haran Marst had vanished. The crowd cried out. Carrick stared at the blue-burning lens, shock cutting through his king's mask. Thornek whispered, impossible. Elowen did not look away from the sea. The beacon was not dead. It was pointing home. The first anchor chain snapped tight enough to make the pier groan. Then another, then 20. Across the black harbor, royal dragon ships turned against tide, wind, and command. Their wing sails unfurled in the blue beacon light. Not full enough to fly, but enough to twist their hulls away from the bride dock. Sailors shouted from decks. Harbor bells rang warning. Bronze mooring posts screamed as the fleet pulled toward the ruined West Pier, where no royal ship had docked since Haran Marst vanished into Blackwater Reach. Elowen kept both hands on the beacon lens frame. If she let go, she feared the court would pretend the light had never happened. Dragon King Carrick Vell came down the last harbor stair, eyes fixed on the ships. Shock had cut through his king's mask, but belief had not yet replaced it. Elowen knew that look. He had seen something impossible. He had not decided what it meant. Lord Beacon Master Thornek Drayle recovered before the crowd did. Seal the docks, he ordered. Cut the west chains. Do not let the fleet answer corruption. Several harbor guards moved at once. Carrick's voice stopped them. No one removes her from the beacon platform. The words struck the pier harder than the chains. The guards froze. Thornek turned carefully. Majesty the Widow may be interfering with royal navigation. She breathed once, Carrick said, and the harbor broke formation. Elowen looked at him then. The harbor corrected formation. Thornek's eyes flashed. Blue light can mean many things. A grief echo, old salt corruption. Widow interference through a dead keeper's song. I did not sing. No, Thornek said smoothly, which makes the reaction more dangerous. The nobles beneath the bride dock canopy murmured. Lady Maravain's envoys whispered among themselves, pale faces turned toward the ships, abandoning their prepared arrival path. The Alliance was watching the harbor fail its own welcome. Elowen felt every eye turn back to her. Fireless widow, failed keeper, dead harbor woman. Names were useful that way. They made fear easier to aim. The beacon lens burned blue beneath her palms, but it was not warm. It pulsed like a lung remembering breath. In the glass, Elowen saw thin lines of light drifting across dark water. Old roots, half buried, layered over one another like wounds healed crooked. Carrick stepped closer, stopping just short of the platform. What did you do? There was no accusation in the question. There was not trust either. Elowen preferred that. Trust given too quickly could be taken back just as fast. It was not answering my blood, she said. It was answering the breath that had kept the harbor alive. Thornek laughed once. A beautiful claim, conveniently impossible to weigh. Elowen turned toward the lens, then weigh the root. His expression hardened. She saw it. a fear too quick for anyone who believed his own report. Eloan lifted her chin. Read the route, not the widow. The ember beacon lens flared. Blue fire climbed through the bronze frame, and the glass widened from darkness into water. Not a reflection. A memory. The harbor appeared inside it as it had been on the night of the war storm, waves high as towers, dragon ships straining against their lines, rain cutting the air white. In the center of the vision, a thin blue path glowed across the sea, the safe blue line. A sound broke from one of the old sailors on the lower dock. He covered his mouth as if he had seen a ghost. Carrick did not move. That was the route filed for Blackwater Reach. Thorneck answered too quickly. Yes, the route the widow failed to maintain. Eloan's nails dug into the bronze frame. Watch it, the vision deepened. The safe blue line ran from the Royal Harbor mouth toward the western channel past the reef teeth and into open water. Haran's ship followed it, a small black silhouette against storm blue light. Behind him came 3 dragon cutters carrying war medicine, sailcloth, and wounded men. Then, before the storm struck hardest, the blue line bent. Not faded, not failed, bent. It shifted south by 3 ship lengths away from the open channel and toward the reef hidden beneath storm foam. Carrick's face went still. Eloan heard herself breathe once. For 2 years they had told her the beacon failed because she had abandoned Flame. For 2 years she had dreamed of Haran sailing into darkness and wondered whether one more breath, one more song, one more hour at the lens could have saved him. But the route had not died. It had been moved. The safe blue line did not fail, she said. It was moved. Thorneck struck the platform with the snuffer rod. Route visions can warp under widow grief. The lens answered before Eloan could. It burned black around the edges, then blue at the center, rejecting his voice as it had rejected noble Flame. Carrick looked from the lens to Thorneck, who had authority to adjust a war route. Thorneck bowed. Beacon Master, Office Royal Harbor Command, and Emergency Sea Council. Names. Majesty and Storm Records names. The old softness was gone from Carrick's voice. But Eloan still did not mistake anger for justice. He had believed the cheaper story because it kept the blame simple. She looked at him across the burning lens. You believed the report because it cost you less than believing me. The words hit him visibly. He did not deny them. Thorneck saw the danger in that silence and raised his rod toward the lens. This platform is corrupted. The widow has anchored dead breath to a royal arrival beacon. Shut it down. No, Eloan said. The blue light surged. The route inside the lens spilled outward onto the water itself. Every person on the pier saw it now, a glowing blue path stretching from the harbor mouth across the dark tide, turning south at the exact point where Haran's ship had vanished. The dragon ships followed the light, pulling closer to the ruined West Pier. Then the route changed again. A second line appeared, hidden beneath the first, fainter, private, marked not for royal ships but for small cutters moving without banners. Thorneck took one step back. One copper rune on his coat went out. The blue route crossed Blackwater Reach, avoided the reef, and ended at a narrow private dock carved into the northern cliff. Carrick stared at the mark burned above it. Eloan knew that mark. Every harbor widow knew it. Lord Beacon Master Thorneck Drail's private harbor seal. The blue harbor line burned on the water like a wound that refused to close. It did not end at open sea. It ended at Thorneck Drail's private dock. For a moment, even the tide seemed to stop moving. Every ship in Valecrest Harbor strained toward the ruined West Pier while the glowing route crossed Blackwater Reach and touched the narrow northern cliff where no royal vessel was supposed to sail. Above the dock mark, Lord Beacon Master Thorneck's copper seal hung in blue fire, clear enough for the lowest sailor to see. Then the harbor erupted. Nobles shouted for order. Sailors cursed. Lady Marivane's envoys drew close beneath the bride canopy, whispering fast behind pale hands. A bride's arrival was supposed to prove alliance strength. Instead, the royal fleet had turned its back on her dock to follow a dead man's route toward a widow's ruin. Carrick Vell did not look away from the mark. Explain it, he said. Thorneck's face had regained its court calm, but 2 copper runes on his coat now burned dim. Emergency harbor practice, Majesty. During war storms, private docks may receive rerouted vessels when the royal pier is compromised. Eloan's hands tightened on the beacon lens frame. Haran's ship was not received. The widow sees grief and calls it root law. No, she said. The lens sees root law, and you call it grief. Thornek turned sharply toward the guards. Remove her from the platform before she anchors more dead breath into the harbor. No one moved. Carrick's voice came quiet. The last man who reaches for her before the lens finishes reading loses the hand. The guards stepped back. Elowen felt the force of that protection, and with it came a pain she did not welcome. He could command men not to touch her now. He had not commanded them to hear her then. She looked at him over the blue glass. Do not make this mercy. His jaw tightened. No, make it record. He bowed his head once. Not deeply, not softly. Enough to let the court see he had heard the correction. Thornek's eyes flashed. Majesty, if you let a fireless widow define harbor record every root judgment in Valemark becomes vulnerable. Elowen faced the lens. Read what passed through the private dock. The blue light dimmed. For one terrible breath, she thought it would refuse her, too. Then the sea answered. The glowing root widened into a map across the water. Dragon ships groaned as their hulls turned with it, forming a half-circle around the west pier. In the center of the harbor, blue fire shaped itself into small moving lights. Haran's vessel, 3 royal cutters, and behind them another line of dark ships with no banners. Private ships. They had crossed safely through Blackwater Reach. Not before the storm. During it. Carrick stepped closer to the edge of the platform. Those are not royal hulls, no, Elowen said. They were never recorded. Thornek struck his snuffer rod against the stone. Smuggler echoes. Old harbor glass collects fragments. The beacon lens went black around his voice. Then it burned blue again. Names appeared in the water one after another. Not ship names. Cargo, dragon oil casks, war salt, eastern silk, storm iron. Safe route toll received. The harbor fell into a silence deeper than shock. Carrick turned on Thornek. You sold passage through a war storm. I preserved trade lines when Royal Command failed to supply the beacon. Elowen stared at him. There it was, the lie changing shape because the first skin had torn. Carrick's eyes narrowed, failed to supply. Thornek spread his hands. The west lens required dragonfire reserves. The court reduced fuel under emergency allocation. The widow was assigned to maintenance below authority. She could not hold the light. That is the failure recorded. Elowen's breath left her slowly. Below authority. Another soft phrase. She lifted one hand from the lens and touched the crescent seal. Read the fuel. Thornek's calm cracked. That is not relevant to route movement. The lens disagreed. The bronze frame opened along 3 narrow seams, revealing old ember channels beneath the glass. Every channel should have glowed red from stored dragonfire. They were empty. Not recently emptied. Scraped clean. Blue fire moved through them like a finger-tracing absence. Fuel withdrawal order. Royal dragonfire reserves removed from west lens. Sailor watch reduced. Storm bell disabled. Beacon keeper Heron Marst assigned unsafe route. Elowen felt the world tilt, but she did not move. Haran had not followed a failed light. He had followed an abandoned one. Carrick's face changed. Who signed the withdrawal? Thornek said, Emergency Harbor Council. The lens burned brighter. Authority seal Lord Beaconmaster Thornek Drail. A roar went through the sailors on the lower pier. One of them shouted Haran's name. Elowen closed her eyes for one heartbeat. She could hear that night again, wind slamming shutters, glass screaming under salt, her own lungs burning as she pressed breath into a lens that had no fuel left to answer with. She had not known why the channels were empty. She had only known ships were out there, and Haran was among them. Carrick looked at her. You kept the lens burning. She opened her eyes. I kept it breathing. Thornek seized on the word. Then she admits interference. Harbor lenses are not made for widow breath. They are made for authorized flame. Elowen looked straight at Carrick. You believed the report because it cost you less than believing me. This time, the words hurt him more visibly. Did you sing? He asked, voice low. The harbor wind moved between them, carrying the memory of the old lighthouse song. Elowen's throat tightened. Then she shook her head. I did that night, she said, until my voice failed. Not for you, not for the court, for the ships. The beacon lens pulsed. A thin blue light rose from the glass and hovered before her mouth, waiting. Carrick understood before the others did. It wants the song. Elowen looked at him, grief and anger held steady in her face. I do not sing for men who stopped listening. The blue light did not vanish. It turned toward the sea. Across the harbor, the route map shifted again. The private ships faded. Haran's vessel brightened. One final line appeared beneath it, thin as a cut through dark water, redirected by false keeper signal. Signal source private cliff dock. Signal voice recorded. Thornak took a step back. The beacon lens filled with sound, not Elowen's song. A man's voice speaking through storm glass on the night Haran died. Shift the blue line south. Let the widow take the failure. And every copper rune on Thornek's coat went out. Every copper rune on Thornek Drail's coat went out. The harbor saw it. So did the king. For one breath, Lord Beaconmaster Thornek stood on the platform without his office shining around him. No copper law. No flame rune authority. Only a man in a dark coat holding a snuffer rod before a blue burning lens that had just spoken in his own voice. Shift the blue line south. Let the widow take the failure. The words repeated through the storm glass inside the ember beacon lens, thinner this time, as if the harbor itself hated carrying them. Elowen Mars did not move. If she moved, she might break. If she looked at Carrick too soon, she might see guilt before justice, and guilt had never raised a drowned ship. Thornek recovered first. Men who lived by record always knew how to smother one. Stormglass distortion, he said sharply. Voices carried through war wind cannot be treated as lawful speech without a keeper's confirmation. Elowen turned to him, then confirm it. His mouth tightened. Carrick's eyes stayed on Thornek. Did you speak that command? I issued many commands during Blackwater Reach. Did you speak that one? Thornek looked toward Lady Maravain's envoys, toward the nobles under the bride dock canopy, toward sailors watching from the lower pier. He was not searching for truth. He was measuring how much lie the harbor could still bear. The widow's breath has awakened a grief root, he said. It has no authority beyond emotional echo. Elowen placed her palm flat against the lens. Read the keeper mark beneath the voice. The blue light deepened. Thornek stepped forward. Denied. Carrick's hand closed around the hilt at his side. You do not command the lens while it is reading. I command Vailmark Beacon. Not if Vailmark Beacon is reading you. The words were not belief. Not yet. They were space. Enough for Elowen to stand inside without being dragged out. The ember beacon lens opened another seam. Blue fire spread across the platform floor and shaped itself into a round keeper seal, cracked at the edge, half buried beneath storm static. Haran Marst's mark. Elowen's breath caught. The mark glowed once weakly, then pulled away from Thornek's recorded voice as if something had been torn from it. Signal voice, false keeper relay. Original keeper mark displaced. Root authority stolen from Haran Marst. A sound moved through the sailors. Not outrage. Not yet. Something older. Recognition beginning to hurt. Thornek struck the snuffer rod against the bronze frame. Enough. The widow is using her husband's name to poison Alliance arrival. Elowen faced him. You used his name to drown him. Carrick stepped up onto the platform. Thornek raised one hand. Majesty, if you stand beside her while the lens burns under widow breath, the Eastern envoys will call it public suspicion against your own beacon office. Carrick stopped. Elowen saw the old trap close alliance on one side, truth on the other, and her life pressed between them like a cheap seal. She looked at him. This is where you stopped listening before. His face tightened. She did not soften the blow. You believed the report because it cost you less than believing me. The blue lens pulsed with her words, not because it chose her, but because those words matched the root of what had happened. Carrick turned from Thornek to the gathered harbor. No ship leaves. No record is sealed. No envoy departs with half a truth. Lady Maravain's chief envoy stiffened. Your Majesty the Alliance bride approaches by dawn. Then she will arrive at a harbor that knows where its dead were sent. That sent a shock through the pier. Elowen did not thank him. She looked back to the glass. Read Heron's last route. The lens dimmed until only a thin blue thread remained over the water. It stretched from the ruined West Pier into Blackwater Reach, following the false line south toward the reef. Haran's vessel appeared again, small and dark, its lantern burning. Behind it, the 3 dragon cutters tried to turn, but the false keeper signal overrode the lens. Then the vision changed. Haran's ship did not strike the reef first. It stopped. The blue line broke around it. A second light rose from the deck. Not noble flame. Not dragonfire. A hand lamp shielded in storm glass flashing toward the west pier. Elowin knew the pattern. 3 short. 1 long. 2 short. Homekeeper distress. Her knees weakened. He knew she whispered. He knew the route had moved. Carrick looked at her. What does that signal mean? Elowin forced the words out. Do not follow the blue line. The harbor went still. In the vision, Haran's warning light flashed again and again. The first dragon cutter began to correct its course. The second followed. The third nearly cleared the reef. Then a red signal cut across the storm from Thorneck's private cliff dock. Override command. The dragon cutters turned south again. Haran's ship swung between them and the reef, not lost by accident. Placed there, the lens spoke. Keeper vessel sacrificed to preserve false route. Elowin's hand slid down the bronze frame. For 2 years they had told her Haran died because she failed to keep the harbor alive. Now the harbor showed the truth. Haran had died trying to stop the lie. Thorneck's face hardened. A war storm creates heroic illusions. Widows often prefer sacrifice to error. Elowin lifted her head slowly, then read the payment. Thorneck went silent. Carrick saw it. Payment. The ember beacon lens turned toward the northern cliff dock. Blue fire struck the water, and from beneath the black tide rose the shape of a sealed harbor ledger locked in barnacle black iron and marked with Thorneck's private seal. The lens spoke over the groaning ships. Safe route toll received before Blackwater reach. Recipient Lord Beacon Master Thorneck Drayle. The iron ledger cracked open, and inside beside the toll record burned the name of the eastern buyer who had purchased the stolen route. The sealed ledger opened, with the sound of wet iron breaking. Salt water poured from its pages, though it had risen dry from beneath the tide. Blue fire ran over each line, lifting names, sums, ship marks, and harbor seals into the air, where every sailor on Valemark Pier could see them. The harbor did not whisper now. It read, Safe route toll received before Blackwater reach. Recipient Lord Beacon Master Thorneck Drayle. Purchaser Eastern Fire Court Route Steward under Bride House Passage Authority. The envoys beneath Lady Maravain's canopy went rigid. Carrick Vile turned toward them. The chief envoy lifted both hands. Majesty Bride House Passage Authority does not imply Lady Maravain's knowledge. Route stewards secure safe arrivals across foreign waters. They do not command war beacons. Thorneck seized the opening. Exactly. The Eastern Court purchased legal passage. I redirected routes to preserve alliance vessels while war conditions made the Western Channel unstable. Elowin stared at him. Haran's ship was not an unstable channel. He was a keeper vessel in a war storm. He was my husband. The words came without softness, and the beacon lens burned brighter for the shape of them. Not because it cared for grief, because grief had been the thing everyone used to bury route record. Carrick's face was carved still. You sold the safe line to Bride House Passage, while royal cutters carried wounded men through Blackwater. I balanced losses, Thorneck said. A king understands that. The harbor went very quiet. Elowin looked at Carrick, then waiting to see which cost he would choose first: alliance, shame, harbor, truth, or a dead keeper's name. Carrick did not answer Thorneck. He turned to the lens. Read whether the bride knew. The blue fire flickered. Elowin felt the bronze frame tense beneath her palms, as if the lens resisted being pushed toward a name before the root itself had finished speaking. She understood before the king did. Not that she said. Carrick looked at her. She held his gaze. Read the root, not the bride. The correction struck the pier. The chief envoy's face changed with relief then unease. Carrick lowered his eyes once in acknowledgement. Read the root. The ember beacon lens widened its blue light over the water. The purchased line appeared again, cutting cleanly through the northern channel past the reefs, past the storm teeth, safe enough for silk-hulled alliance ships. Beneath it ran the false line. Haran had followed, pushed south toward death. 2 routes, one sold, one sacrificed. Thorneck's snuffer rod trembled in his grip. Elowin saw it. "Read who moved Heron's keeper mark onto the false line," she said. Thornek snapped denied. "Keeper marks are sacred to Harbor Office. The office drowned him," Aloan said. The lens answered. Blue fire struck the ledger's center. A small burned token rose from the wet pages, half of a keeper's copper seal cracked through the middle. Haran's mark. Iloan had worn its other half on a cord beneath her dress for 2 years because no one would let her bury it with him. She pulled it free now. The harbor watched as she placed her half against the flame. The pieces did not join. They recoiled. A false copper filling had been placed between them, shaped to mimic Haran's authority. The lens spoke. Keeper mark copied. False route. Authority attached after departure. Original keeper signal suppressed. Iloan's fingers went numb around the seal. He did not guide them wrong. No, Carrick said quietly. The word should have comforted her. It did not. Truth, arriving late, still stepped over the bodies it failed to save. Thornek pointed the snuffer rod toward the ledger. A copied mark proves wartime confusion, not murder. Eloan turned to him, then read the breath. For the first time, real alarm crossed his face. Carrick caught it. So did the old sailors near the lower steps. "The breath," Carrick asked. Eloan did not look at him. The beacon lost fuel that night. The channels were scraped clean. Noble flame was gone. Dragonfire reserves were withdrawn. I had one thing left. Her throat tightened, remembering salt smoke and the taste of blood. My breath. The lens pulsed once blue and deep. It was not answering her blood. It was answering the breath that had kept the harbor alive. A thin light lifted from the glass and hovered before her mouth again. This time, Eloan did not sing. She opened her lips and exhaled slowly the way she had that night, until her lungs felt torn raw. The harbor vanished into memory. Not full memory, route memory, the kind the lens kept when flame failed and breath carried signal. The court saw Eloan alone inside the lower beacon chamber during Blackwater Reach. Rain hammered the glass. Empty ember channels smoked around her. Her hands were burned from holding the bronze frame. She leaned into the lens and breathed again and again, forcing blue light into a harbor the crown had already starved. Above the chamber, Thornek's false signal bent the line south. Below it, Eloan's breath fought to bend the route back. Carrick stared at the vision. His voice came rough. "You kept the harbor alive after we withdrew its fire." She looked at him through the blue light. "You withdrew listening first." The words landed harder than accusation. The lens shook. The route memory shifted to the final moment. Eloan's breath reached the water. Haran's ship saw it. His distress lamp flashed once more toward the west pier. Then the false route swallowed her signal. Not because her breath failed, because someone sealed the breath channel from above. The lens read the final line. Breath channel closed by Beacon Master command. Thornek backed toward the bride dock canopy. Carrick stepped after him. But before the king could speak, a horn sounded from the outer sea. Not Vailmark's horn. Eastern. Every envoy turned toward the dark horizon. A pale gold shiplight appeared beyond Blackwater Reach, moving fast beneath Bride House banners. Lady Maravain's arrival fleet had entered the harbor road early. The ember beacon lens turned black. Then over the water, the stolen northern safe line lit blue for her ships, and the false southern line opened beneath it, waiting. The outer sea horn sounded again. This time it did not announce ceremony. It announced danger. Beyond Blackwater Reach, Lady Maravain's arrival fleet cut through the dark beneath pale gold shiplights and eastern Bride House banners. Their hulls were slimmer than Vailmark dragon ships built for speed and court display rather than war storm. Wing sails flashed white in the distance. They were already inside the harbor road, too early, too far in. And the ember beacon lens had opened 2 lines beneath them. The northern line burned blue and clean, the safe passage Thornek had sold through his private dock. Beneath it, faint but hungry, the southern false line glowed toward the reef teeth where Haran's ship had vanished. Iloan Marst felt the lens tremble under her hands. Not choosing, remembering. Carrick Vale turned toward Thornek, who ordered the bride fleet early. Thornek's face had become calm again, which frightened Iloan more than panic. "Eastern ships sail on eastern tides, Majesty. If the widow had not corrupted the beacon, the harbor would have received them safely." Iloan looked at the water. "He is moving the blame before the ships even strike." Thornek lifted the snuffer rod. "She admits interference." "No," Eloan said. I am reading the route. Carrick stepped onto the beacon platform, stopping just outside the blue light. He did not touch her. What happens if they follow the southern line? The reef takes the first ship, Eloin said. The rest will turn toward the private dock for rescue. Thorneck's jaw tightened. Carrick saw it, and the private dock collects debt. The lens answered with a low blue pulse. Route salvage toll prepared. Bride House arrival security claim pending. The Eastern envoys began shouting at once. One accused Vailmark of treachery. Another demanded the beacon be placed under neutral command. Sailors ran along the lower pier, but no one knew which line to obey. Both glowed. Both claimed the sea. Thorneck raised his voice above them. If the king trusts a fireless widow over harbor office, every ship lost tonight belongs to her breath. Eloin turned to him. You have always liked putting dead ships in my mouth. The words silenced the platform. Carrick's eyes moved to her face, but she did not look back. She could not afford the ache of being seen now. Seeing was late. Ships were moving. The first bride vessel began to turn south. Eloin pressed both palms to the bronze frame. Read the living route. The lens flickered, too weak. The false southern line had more than light behind it. It had toll marks, private seals, purchased authority, and a bride house arrival claim feeding it from the northern cliff. Eloin's breath alone could wake old memory. But to hold a route against active beacon law, the harbor needed a keeper signal, and the keeper was dead. Thorneck smiled faintly. A widow's breath cannot command arrival traffic. No, Eloin said. But it can remember what command tried to bury. She reached beneath her cloak and pulled out Haran's broken keeper seal, 1/2 copper, 1/2 grief. It had hung against her skin for 2 years, warmed by every breath the court called useless. Carrick's voice lowered. Eloin. She heard warning there. Maybe fear. Maybe the memory of an old lighthouse song neither of them had earned the right to touch. She looked at him then. Do not ask me to sing for you. I was not going to. The answer came quietly enough that only she heard. For a moment, the harbor wind moved between them like something that might one day become trust if truth survived long enough. Then the bride fleet's leading ship crossed the mouth of the false line. Eloin lifted Haran's seal to her lips. She did not sing the old lighthouse song. Not yet. She breathed through the broken copper, slow and deep the way Haran had taught her when fog erased the world, and only rhythm kept ships from drifting. The ember beacon lens caught the soundless breath. Blue light ran through the seal, through her fingers, through the frame. It was not answering her blood. It was answering the breath that had kept the harbor alive. The northern line brightened. The leading bride ship shuddered and turned back toward safe water. A cheer began below. Thorneck killed it. He drove the snuffer rod into the platform seam. Red-black fire shot from its tip and struck the lens at the side where old keeper marks were stored. The glass screamed. Eloin nearly fell. Carrick moved, but she caught herself first. The lens went black at the edges. Across the water, the false southern line flared brighter than the safe route. Thorneck's voice cut through the harbor. Emergency bride protection invoked. All arrival routes answer Beacon Master authority. Carrick drew his sword. Thorneck smiled. Kill me, Majesty, and the bride fleet has no lawful route. Eloin tasted salt and copper. She understood now. Thorneck had not only sold the old route, he had built himself into every emergency path. If exposed, he would make the harbor choose between justice and drowning the Alliance bride. Eloin looked at the lens. Read whose authority keeps the safe route locked. The blue light struggled. Then a single name burned inside the glass. Not Thorneck's, Carrick Vell. The platform went still. Thorneck's smile widened. Royal Harbor Authority. Your own command, Majesty. Carrick stared at the name as if it had risen from beneath his ribs. Eloin turned to him slowly. He did not speak. That silence was answer enough. The safe blue line had been locked under the Dragon King's seal. The bride fleet drifted another ship length toward the reef. No one on Vailmark Pier breathed easily after Carrick's name appeared inside the ember beacon lens. The blue glass held it there bright and merciless, while the false southern route burned under the eastern ships like a path made of quiet teeth. Carrick Vell stared at his own seal. Thorneck Drayle did not waste the silence. Royal Harbor Authority is absolute during Alliance arrival. The lens obeys His Majesty's own command. Any fault in the route belongs to the Crown, not the Beacon office. The Eastern envoys turned toward Carrick at once. Elowen Marst saw the trap close around him and hated that part of her still wanted him to escape it. Not for his crown, not for his pride. Because if Thornek buried himself beneath the king's seal, Haran's name would drown again under words too large to fight. She placed both hands on the bronze frame. "Read the command behind the seal." Thornek snapped. "Royal seal is command enough." "Not for a harbor lens," Elowen said. "Routes remember sequence." The lens pulsed blue. Carrick looked at her. "Can it read that it already is?" The glass widened into a dark sea map. Carrick's seal remained at the center, but now smaller lines opened behind it. Date, dock order, witness report source. The route lock had not been born from the storm itself. It had been set afterward. After Blackwater Reach, after Haran died, after Elowen was blamed, the lens read in cold blue fire. Royal seal applied following Beacon Master report. Report claim West Lens abandoned by widow attendant. Report claim Haran Marst vessel lost due to keeper failure. Report recommendation restrict safe blue line under Crown seal until harbor purity restored. Elowen's fingers went numb against the frame. Carrick closed his eyes once. Only once. When he opened them, he looked older. "You signed it," she said. His answer came low. "Yes." Thornek stepped forward, triumphant. His Majesty acted on evidence available to him. Elowen turned on Carrick. "You believed the report because it cost you less than believing me." The same words again. This time, there was nowhere for him to place them but inside himself. "Yes," he said. "The harbor heard it. Not enough. Not nearly enough." But the admission cracked the stone beneath the lie. The leading bride ship rang its distress bell. The sound carried thin and frightened over the water as its wing sails strained against the false root. The reef teeth waited beneath the foam, black and sharp. Thornek raised his snuffer rod. "Majesty, if you revoke your seal now, the Alliance bride enters Valemark under widow-guided harbor light. The Eastern Court will call it insult." Carrick looked toward the sea. Elowen knew that moment. She had lived under it for 2 years, the place where powerful men chose what truth could be afforded. Then Carrick stepped to the edge of the platform. No envoy, no office, and no alliance will use her breath as blame again. Thornek's face changed. Carrick drew the bronze knife from his belt and cut across the seal ring on his palm. Blood welled dark against gold. Elowen stiffened. "Do not put royal blood into the lens." He stopped. The old Carrick might have commanded. The king before her now held still, bleeding, listening, late, but listening. "What does it need?" he asked. "Not blood," she said. "Withdrawal." The lens burned brighter. Elowen lifted Haran's broken keeper seal. "You locked the safe line because you believed I abandoned it. Say that report is untrusted before the harbor. Not forgiven, not corrected quietly. Untrusted." The Eastern envoys protested. Thornek shouted over them. The bride fleet's bell rang again. Carrick faced the harbor. "The Blackwater report is untrusted," he said. "The widow's failure record is suspended. The royal seal on the safe blue line is withdrawn until the lens completes route reading." The ember beacon lens exploded with blue light. Across the water, the false southern path flickered. The northern safe route brightened. For one breath, the leading bride ship corrected course. Then Thornek drove the snuffer rod deep into the platform seam. Red-black fire tore across the bronze frame, striking the place where Carrick's withdrawn seal had just loosened the lock. The safe line shuddered, half open, half choked. "You cannot withdraw what the harbor still needs," Thornek hissed. "Without Beacon Master, authority no royal route can hold." Elowen felt the lens falter beneath her palms. The sea needed more than a revoked seal. It needed a living keeper signal strong enough to replace the poisoned office. Haran's seal was broken. The official keeper dead. The harbor fire starved. The fleet too close to the reef. The lens turned toward her mouth, waiting. Carrick saw it. So did Thornek. The Beacon Master smiled. "There, let the widow sing majesty. Let the Alliance be saved by the same dead breath that corrupted Blackwater. I will record every ship under her interference." Elowen's throat tightened. The old lighthouse song rose inside her like pain remembering its shape. Carrick looked at her, and the memory between them was almost cruel. The lower lighthouse, her hands black with ash, his near smile when he heard her sing before the world made the song into evidence. He said nothing. That was the first mercy he gave the song. Eloan lifted Haran's broken seal to the lens. "I will not sing for the court," she said. "I will not sing for the bride. I will not sing for you." The lens pulsed. She looked toward the dark water where the ships waited between Truth and Reef. "I will sing for the root." Then Eloan opened her mouth, and the old harbor song entered the blue light. The safe northern line blazed alive. The bride fleet turned. For one impossible moment, Vailmark Harbor held. Then the lens cracked down the center, and from inside the glass, a drowned ship bell began to ring with Haran Marst's name. The bride fleet cleared the reef by less than a ship's length. Sailors on Vailmark Pier cried out as the pale gold vessels swung back onto the northern safe line, their wing sails snapping hard in the blue light. For one breath, the harbor remembered how to live. Chains groaned. Water flashed. Dragon ships answered the route, like iron filings turning toward a hidden star. Then the cracked ember beacon lens rang again. Not with metal, with a drowned bell's voice. Haran Marst. Eloan's song died in her throat. The blue root flickered. The bride fleet held course, but the light under their hulls thinned as if the lens had given too much of itself. A line split down the glass from crown to base, glowing blue at the edges. Inside the crack, something moved like a bell swinging beneath black water. Thornek Drail seized the silence. "There, hear it." The widow's song has dragged dead echoes into an alliance route. Eloan's hands shook against Haran's broken keeper seal. Carrick Vale stepped toward the lens, but she lifted one hand before he touched the frame. "Do not," she said. He stopped. Thornek's eyes flashed. "Majesty, the lens is cracked. Bride ships remain under threat. Remove her and restore Beacon Master command." "No one silences the song until the lens finishes reading," Carrick said. Eloan looked at him. The words protected her. They did not heal the years he had been silent. She turned away before the old ache could soften her at the wrong moment. The bell rang again. Haran Marst. The name did not come from grief. Eloan knew grief. Grief made echoes inside the living. This sound came from the lens itself, from root memory buried below glass and tide. She pressed Haran's broken keeper's seal to the crack. "Read the bell, not the widow." The blue light steadied. Thornek's face tightened. The sea outside the west pier began to turn in a slow circle. Foam gathered over the place where Haran's vessel had vanished. The Royal Dragon ship strained toward it, not wildly now, but with the solemn pull of ships answering a harbor mark older than command. A shape rose beneath the water, black bronze, barnacle-crusted. A ship's bell. The crowd pulled back from the pier edge as the bell surfaced in a column of blue fire. Its side was split, but the keeper mark remained visible, Haran Marst's seal scored through by a red override line. Eloan could not breathe. Thornek said quickly, "War salvage." Many bells were recovered after Blackwater. The lens answered. "Recovered before death confirmation. Private dock custody. Filed as unmarked wreck metal." Eloan's grief went very still. Before death, confirmation. Haran's bell had been taken before his death was lawfully recorded. Before his name was entered among the drowned. Before anyone told Eloan the sea had swallowed him beyond witness. Carrick's voice came low. "You had his bell before the search ended." Thornek's face hardened. "I had wreckage, not proof of life." Eloan looked at the bell through the blue fire. "Bells do not leave ships before the keeper does." The old sailors murmured agreement. Haran had taught her that too. A harbor keeper, abandoned cargo before bell, mast before bell, even blood before bell. The bell was the ship's last mouth. If it had reached Thornek's dock before the death record, someone had stripped the vessel while the root was still being buried. Eloan lifted her chin. "Read the last ring." The bell swung once. The sound opened the water. Root memory rose from Blackwater Reach, Haran's vessel. Caught between reef and false signal, the 3 dragon cutters turning south behind him. Haran crossed the deck through storm and fire, one arm, bleeding his other hand on the bell rope. He rang warning toward every ship behind him. 3 times. Then the red override from Thornek's private dock cut across the water. The bell rope burned. Haran did not stop. He took the bronze striker in his hand and struck the bell himself until the sound cracked through storm glass. Eloin saw the moment his eyes turned toward Valemark, toward the lighthouse, toward her. The Bell carried his final route mark into the lens before the sea swallowed the deck. Not a farewell. A witness. The lens spoke. Keeper Harren Marst marked false route before death. Warning suppressed by Beaconmaster override. Safe line sold. Widow breath record used to conceal route crime. The harbor exploded in fury. Sailors surged toward the platform. Nobles retreated behind guards. Lady Maravain's envoys stared at the bride dock as if it had become a trap built from another woman's dead. Thornek raised the snuffer rod. If you let that record stand, every ship saved tonight will be credited to a fireless widow and a dead keeper. The Alliance will say Valemark cannot govern its own harbor. Carrick looked at him. Valemark cannot govern it under you. For the first time, Thornek's calm broke completely. He turned the snuffer rod toward the cracked lens and drove its red-black fire into the split glass. Eloin cried out as the lens shuddered beneath her hands. The blue route over the harbor fractured into 3 broken paths. The bride fleet lurched. Dragon ships groaned as their hulls twisted between conflicting signals. Thornek shouted over the chaos. Emergency command returns to living office. The lens dimmed. Eloin felt the root slipping from her breath, from Haran's bell, from every proof the harbor had fought to show. She gripped the cracked frame until bronze cut her palms. No, she whispered. The bell rang once more. Not Haran's name this time. Hers, Eloin Marst. The entire harbor heard it. Inside the broken lens, blue fire shaped a new route mark around her breath. Not keeper's wife. Not failed widow. Living harbor witness. Thornek stared in horror as every royal dragon ship turned from the bride dock, from the private cliff route, from the false southern line, and faced the ruined west pier where Eloin stood beneath the cracked blue lens. Then the harbor floor split open under Thornek's boots, and beneath him, sealed in drowned bronze, lay the stolen master chart of Blackwater Reach. The split in the harbor floor did not swallow Thornek Drail. It held him there. Black seawater surged up around his boots, then froze into a ring of blue fire. Beneath the cracked stones sealed in drowned bronze, the master chart of Blackwater Reach rose from the deep, like something the harbor had been waiting years to spit back into daylight. Every ship bell in Valemark rang once. Eloin Marst kept one bleeding hand on the cracked ember beacon lens, and the other pressed against Haran's broken keeper seal. The blue fire around her mouth still shaped the words the harbor had given her. Living harbor witness, not queen, not chosen flame. Witness. Thornek looked down at the master chart as if it were a corpse that had opened its eyes. That chart is dead record. Unfit for public reading. Eloin's voice came steady. Then why was it under your boots? The sailors below the platform roared approval, but Carrick Vale lifted one hand and silence cut through them. His gaze did not leave Thornek. No one touches the chart until she reads it. Thornek snapped. She has no office. The ember beacon lens pulsed blue. Office failed. Route remains. Eloin felt the words through the bronze more than heard them. The lens was weakening. The crack through its center spread slowly and beyond the harbor mouth. Lady Maravain's arrival fleet held on the northern line by a thin strand of blue. If the lens died before the chart was read, Thornek would call every revelation grief-light and panic. She stepped from the platform onto the flooded stone. Carrick moved half a step with her, then stopped himself. Eloin noticed. So did Thornek. So did the harbor. It mattered that the Dragon King did not put his hand over hers and claim the truth as royal discovery. He had taken too much by listening late. This reading had to be hers. Eloin knelt before the drowned bronze seal. Read the master route. The chart opened, not like parchment, like water obeying memory. Blue lines rose from its surface, the Royal Channel, the West Keeper route, the northern private dock, the southern reef path. Then red lines appeared beneath them, thin and hidden, crossing the blue-like cuts under skin. Route sail entered before storm. Safe line transferred to private cliff dock. False blue line attached to keeper vessel. Breath channel sealed after widow signal reached harbor glass. Payment received in storm iron, dragon oil, and Eastern Passage bonds. Thornek's face hardened. Trade payments, not murder. The chart turned black around his voice. Then blue fire burned through the final layer. Keeper warning suppressed. Haran Marst, vessel used as route shield. Surviving cutters redirected to confirm widow failure record. The old sailors on the lower pier began shouting Haran's name. Some cursed Thornek, some wept openly. Noble guards shifted, as if they no longer knew which side of the harbor counted as law. Eloin looked at the chart until the lines blurred. Haran had not simply drowned. He had been made useful to the lie after death. His ship, his bell, her breath, her silence, all folded into one clean report Carrick had accepted because it was easier than hearing a fireless widow. She turned toward the king. "You see it now," she said. Carrick's face tightened. "Yes, that does not return him. No, that does not restore the years you let his name carry failure. No," she nodded once. "Not forgiveness. Not yet. Only record." Thornek seized the moment. Majesty grief has made her impossible to satisfy. She will use every reading to hold the crown hostage. Eloin looked back at him. "Read who profited after the failure record." The chart answered before Thornek could object. Beacon Master authority expanded. Private dock granted emergency salvage rights. Widow breath classified unlawful interference. Ruined West Pier closed from royal service. Bride dock construction approved. Carrick's eyes moved to the bright bride dock canopy. Lady Marivane's envoys went pale. The stolen route had not only killed Haran, it had moved the harbor's future east away from the old Keeper Pier, toward the dock Thornek controlled and sold as safe. Eloin stood. "The harbor did not die. You moved it." The ember beacon lens flared so hard the crack down its center filled with blue fire. True route witness confirmed. Living harbor, witness Eloin Marst. Thornek's snuffer rod shook in his hand. A lens cannot appoint office. Eloin turned to the ships. Every Royal Dragon vessel faced the ruined West Pier now, their figureheads lowered toward her platform, not bowing to her, answering the route she had kept alive. "The lens did not appoint me," she said. "It remembered who kept breathing after you starved it." Carrick stepped forward. "Lord Beacon Master Thornek Drail, by harbor record and royal witness, you are stripped of beacon command." Thornek laughed. It was a thin, ugly sound. "You can strip a title," he said. "You cannot command a cracked lens without a beacon master." He drove the snuffer rod into the master chart. Red-black fire poured into the drowned bronze. The blue lines convulsed. Out beyond Blackwater Reach, the Bride Fleet's leading ship swung sharply toward the reef again. Eloin cried out and seized the chart with both hands. The fire burned her palms, but she held. Carrick drew his sword. Thornek smiled at him through the red glow. "Kill me and lose the route. Spare me and admit Vailmark still needs my office." The lens spoke over the storm. Final harbor reading required. Eloin looked at the cracked glass. The blue light inside it had thinned to a single breath. The chart opened, one last line. "To restore true route, living witness must name the harbor before crown and sea." Thornek went still. Carrick turned to Eloin. "What does that mean?" She already knew. Her throat tightened around the old lighthouse song. "It means I must speak what they buried," she said. "Not sing it. Name it." The harbor fell silent. The lens waited. And from beneath the master chart, Haran's bell rang once more, carrying the first words of a name Eloin had never been allowed to say in public. Haran's bell rang from beneath the master chart, and the first word it carried was not his name. It was the harbor's, Vailmark. The sound moved through the water, through the cracked ember beacon lens, through every dragon ship straining against false command. The Bride Fleet trembled near the reef held by a dying thread of blue. The ruined West Pier shuddered under Eloin Marst's feet, as if the stones themselves had waited 2 years to hear the words spoken without shame. Lord Beacon Master Thornek Drail went white. "Do not finish it." Eloin looked at him. For once he did not hide fear behind law. The master chart burned under her palms, red-black fire from his snuffer rod, clawing at the blue root lines. Her skin blistered where she held it, but she did not pull away. Pain had told the truth more faithfully than any court report in Vailmark. Carrick Vale stepped toward her. The lens flashed. He stopped before touching her. Eloin saw the restraint, and it steadied her more than rescue would have. This was not a name the Dragon King could speak for her. He had signed the silence once. He could not now own the correction. "What name?" Carrick asked, voice low. Thornek shouted over him. If she names the harbor under widow breath, every root seal tied to Beacon Master office breaks. The bride fleet will have no lawful arrival path. Lady Maravain's chief envoy looked toward the dark water, then to Aloin. And if she does not? No one answered. The leading bride ship tilted toward the reef. That was answer enough. Eloin closed her eyes and heard Haran's final bell again. Not farewell, witness. She saw the lower beacon chamber, empty ember channels, her own breath, feeding blue light after dragonfire reserves had been stripped away. She saw Carrick on the old lighthouse stair, before all this listening to her song, before he learned how easy it was to stop. When she opened her eyes, she did not sing. She named. Vailmark is not Thornek's dock. The lens flared. The red-black fire recoiled. Vailmark is not the bride pier. The dragon ships groaned, hulls turning. Vailmark is not the false southern line. The reef path cracked apart across the water. Thornek lunged for the snuffer rod, but a ring of blue flame locked around his wrist. The rod would not move. Eloin's voice shook once, then strengthened. Vailmark is the west light, the keeper bell, the safe blue line, the sailors who followed it, and the breath that kept it alive when the crown withdrew fire. The harbor answered. Every bell along the piers rang at once. The cracked lens filled with blue, so bright the night turned silver. The master chart opened fully beneath Eloin's hands, showing every route Thornek had altered, sold, sealed, or buried. The northern safe line blazed across Blackwater Reach, clean and strong. The bride fleet swung away from the reef and entered the harbor road under true guidance. Sailors shouted from the lower docks. Not celebration yet. Relief. The kind that came after death passed close enough to touch the mast. The ember beacon lens spoke in a voice of glass tide and old flame. True harbor named. Living harbor witness confirmed. False beacon master command rejected. Thornek screamed as his copper coat runes reignited, not bright but blue-black, each one burning with the route records he had falsified. The master chart pulled the snuffer rod from his hand and sealed it into the drowned bronze beside the tolls, the stolen marks, and the false route that had killed Haran. Carrick's sword lowered. Lord Beacon Master Thornek Drayle, he said, by harbor record fleet witness and crown withdrawal of trust, you are stripped of beacon office. Thornek laughed through pain. You still need a beacon master. No, Eloin said. Everyone turned. She stood with burned hands, wind tearing at her cloak, the blue lens behind her cracked but burning. Vailmark needs a keeper office that cannot sell a route in one man's name. The lens pulsed. Harbor witness speaks true. Carrick looked at her then, and the guilt in his face was no longer the soft kind that wanted to be forgiven. It had become something harder. Useful, perhaps, if he survived the work of it. He faced the harbor. From this night, no route seal stands under a single beacon master. Keeper Mark's sailor witness lens, record, and harbor breath all enter public chart before any war route is moved. The old sailors on the lower pier struck their fists to their chests. Lady Maravain's arrival ships passed the reef safely and slowed beneath the blue light. Her chief envoy bowed his head toward Eloin, not deeply, not politically enough to look rehearsed. The Eastern bride arrives by the widow's true route, he said. We will record it so. Thornek tried to speak again, but the harbor floor opened beneath him, not to drown him, but to bind him. Blue route chains rose from the master chart and wrapped his arms, his coat, his ruined office. The lens read his final charge. Safe line sold. Keeper vessel sacrificed. Widow breath blamed. Royal seal misled. Harbor command abused. The route chains dragged him from the platform toward the lower holding stones, where false beacon masters were once kept until tide trial. No sailor moved to help him. The blue light softened. Eloin's knees nearly failed. Carrick caught himself before reaching for her. She noticed. This time she chose to sit on the edge of the platform herself, still holding Haran's broken seal. The bell beneath the chart rang once more, gentle now. His name rose over the harbor without blame attached to it. Haran Marst, keeper witness, route shield, not failed. Eloin bowed her head. The tears came then, silent and furious, but she did not hide them. The harbor had seen her blamed. It could see her grieve. Carrick stood several steps away until her breathing steadied. I cannot return what my seal helped bury, he said. No. I cannot ask you to sing in my halls because I remember too late that I loved the sound. Her fingers tightened around the seal. He continued rougher. I will not ask forgiveness tonight. Good, she said. The word almost broke him. He accepted it. What remains? He asked. Elwyn looked over the harbor, the West Pier, the Bride Fleet, the royal ships, the cracked lens still burning blue from breath and record. The chart must be copied before sailors, widows, and keepers. Haran's name must be cleared before every dock that cursed it. The West Pier must reopen. Every route sold under Thorneck's seal must be read. It will be done, not as mercy, as Record Carrick said. Only then did Elwyn look at him fully. The old ache was still there. So was anger. So was the dangerous memory of a king pausing on a lighthouse stair to hear a song before he became the man who believed a cheaper lie. None of it was simple enough to name love. Not yet. But when the wind shifted, Carrick did not ask her to sing. He listened. That was the first thing. Behind them, the ember beacon lens remained cracked blue fire glowing through the wound in the glass. It did not close. It did not crown her. It did not choose. It remembered, and all across Valemark dragon ships turned home by the route Elowen Marst had kept breathing when no one else would.